Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We generally do a couple of webinars a month. Some of them are overviews of ClubExpress. Some of them are new function and new feature introductions. And a couple of times a month, we do webinars that drill down into particular modules. And today's going to be one of those. Today's going to be a little bit of a hybrid because we recently updated the control panel, and I want to go over that. And also because this is the end of the year, there are a lot of people that come and go in their organizations, or their roles change within their organizations. And we want to talk a little bit about that and some of the tools for dealing with your administrators and coordinators and moderators. But before we do that, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. All of the phones and microphones are muted, except for mine and Samantha's. And questions should be asked into the chat window. And we will revisit the questions at the end of the demonstration to see if there's anything that wasn't covered. And this is particularly useful for people that are watching the webinar via recording. And all of our webinars are available on the clubexpress.com cool stuff page. So if you go to clubexpress.com, click on cool stuff in the upper right, and then click on the webinars tab on the lower left, you will see a schedule of upcoming webinars, and you will see a list of recorded webinars. And above the webinar tab on the left is the video tutorials tab. And that's where you could see a list of the most recent video tutorials. And this is particularly useful when there are changes. Like a month or so ago, we had changes to the way you manage your homepage and custom pages, and how to use the new page builder, and how to use the new people manager. And so you could get to them here. You could also get to them from the help screens. So there's a lot of video tutorials and webinars that are available to you. And all of the videos are actually housed on YouTube. So if you're watching one of them on YouTube, you can click on the subscribe button and then optionally on the notify icon so that you can be notified anytime there's new content on the channel. And finally, if you are using ClubExpress, and particularly if ClubExpress is doing very well for you and your organization, we'd appreciate it if you would go to clubexpress.com/reviews, click on one of these review sites, and leave a review so other people that are evaluating association management solutions can have the benefit of how ClubExpress is working for your organization. Today, I want to talk about two things. One is the new control panel. And we've actually talked about the new control panel in some previous webinars, and I just want to go over them again and take a look at some of the features and show you a couple of things. There is a new tutorial on the control panel that you're welcome to view. And the control panel has really been redesigned to make it simpler to use, make better use of screen real estate, not show things that are not appropriate for your organization and such. But also, whenever I send out a notice that we're going to do a webinar, especially this time of year, well, actually, usually right after the first of the year, we wind up getting email responses saying, well, I am no longer with this organization, or my contract with the organization ran out at the end of the year. I need you to remove me as an administrator. And I thought it was a good idea about 2 years ago to make a video about managing your contacts and titles, and who's an administrator, who's a coordinator, and say who's a moderator. So this time of year is a good idea to look at those things again, just to remind you that when there are changes in roles in your organization, you really should update things. And some things may not be particularly obvious, like email forwarding. So we're going to take a look at a few of those things. So today we're going to look at the control panel first. We'll look at the general layout of the control panel, a new feature called notices. We'll look at the support tab, and then we'll look at the rest of the tabs and talk about the panels. For each tab, there's an administration, a website modules, and a setup panel. I'll show you where to get to reports, and I'll show you the difference between links in the view mode versus the edit mode. And then we'll look at configuring a tab to set up the properties for individual modules, to set up coordinators, and how to hide and show modules. And then we'll go into some just general permissions assigning. And so we'll look at the club tab where there's a link for the administrators and coordinators module. And we will go and look at how you add or view administrators, how you add and view coordinators. and we'll show how you can view them by either by function or by member. And a really cool feature that wasn't in the video that I did 2 years ago, where you can copy a coordinator's rights from one coordinator to another coordinator. So if you get somebody who is now assuming the role that somebody else had, rather than you having to go set the rights individually for this person, you could say, oh, copy from that person, and they get all of the rights. And we'll also talk about the favorites function that a lot of people still don't know about. If you are an admin or a coordinator, you can set favorites. We'll talk about, on the website tab, custom pages. In addition to being able to assign a coordinator for the custom pages module, you can set coordinators for specific pages where these people can edit and manage specific pages. Then we'll look at the communications tab, and we'll talk about this email account forwarding, and we'll talk about the moderators for discussion forums and how you can find out who moderates which forums, or if you have somebody leaves the organization or you have to move responsibility for moderating a forum from one person to another, it's good to be able to see who is moderating what. So we're already logged into one of our demo sites as an administrator. Martin Smith is an administrator, and so he's got full administrative rights. So that means when Martin Smith goes to the control panel is where you do all the back-end administration. So an administrator can see everything on the control panel. And as you can see here on the control panel, there are several tabs. Well, the first thing the control panel tells you is how many people you have in your membership, how many of them are pending. Pending might be because they have been approved and haven't paid their bill yet, and how many memberships have expired. I'm very careful not to say the member has expired unless they've actually passed away. So the membership has expired. So this is a very quick look at your members. Then you've got 6 tabs or possibly 7 tabs. If you are an aging in place village, part of the Village to Village network, you'll have another tab called services. We're not going to show that here, but it functions the same as all the rest of the tabs. The only tab that is a little different from all the rest of them is the support tab. So I'm just going to jump to the support tab first. So the support tab has information about how to get to online help. And on any page where there is help available, you will see a help icon here, and that will jump you to the help system. In that help system, you can actually generate guides or manuals. It's like a getting started guide. You can download the administrator reference, content editor. These are all PDFs that are derived from the help system. There are the video tutorials I mentioned, so you can go to your control panel and see the newest of the video tutorials, or by tab. So the tutorials that are pertinent to particular tabs. There is a forum called the admin forum, the administrators forum, where you can go to the administrators forum. I don't want to click on it here because that's really only for administrators, and I don't want this in the YouTube video. But this will only show a link to the administrator forum if you have forums enabled on your site. If you do not have forums enabled on your site, this message will be a little different, and it will give you a link to enable forums on your site, but that does not make forums available to your members. You'd have to do that specific. But in order to access the admin forums, you need to have the client side available on your site. And then finally, at the bottom here, it shows that you can contact ClubExpress for unlimited technical support. So it doesn't matter how many administrators you have, how many coordinators you have. You can contact ClubExpress either by telephone or by email. And what's unique to ClubExpress is not only can you as an admin or a coordinator or a moderator contact ClubExpress, but so can your members. If they go to the Contact Us link at the bottom of the page, it'll bring up information about the club. But at the bottom of every one of these pages, if I can scroll down to the bottom here, It says if you have a ClubExpress transaction that you don't understand or technical support question about the website, your members can call ClubExpress and say, listen, I'm having difficulty registering for this, or I can't seem to renew my account or whatever. This is really rather unique. So that takes a lot of the burden off of you as an administrator to say to your members, it's perfectly okay if you call ClubExpress. So the support tab is a little different than all the other tabs. So I wanted to show that one first. I'm going to go to the People tab for a moment. So again, we're still in the control panel. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. And at the top of the control panel, we have two new buttons. The control panel used to be a regular tabbed interface with a lot of links on it. We have simplified it. Now any item like the People Manager or any of these items only appears on one tab. Before, something could appear on multiple tabs because, well, people do this thing, so people make donations, so let's put it on the People tab. But donations are about money, so let's also put it on the Money tab. That got a little bit out of hand, so now it's any module or any piece of functionality is only available on one tab. There's a new feature at the top that says Show Notices. So if ClubExpress needs to send out a notice to people, we can put it up very quickly, whether it be a maintenance release or something like that. And if there's a notice that you haven't seen, the notice will show up here. And you can show or hide notices. So it's showing right now that there are no new notices that for Martin since this administrator logged on, but it says, oh, you can read older notices by clicking here. And so right now, the only notice that we've put up was that, hey, there's a video tutorial about how to use the control panel. So you can click on this to read the video tutorial. If there were other notices, they would also show up here in a list. And you can always hide notices anytime you want. We'll get to this configure button in a moment. But first, we want to look at the panels. With the exception of the support tab, all the tabs have three panels. There's admin functions, website modules, and setup. Admin functions are mostly things that you do on a fairly regular basis, but these are things that really have no user interface. So the People Manager is where you manage your members and non-members. There's no page that gets surfaced to the users about that. A page that would get surfaced to the user would be, say, the standard member directory or your business directory. So admin functions are things that really only administrators and coordinators ever interact with. This is also where reports are. Reports used to be in a separate panel in the old control panel, but now it's here. So if you click on reports, it says, oh, here are the different kinds of reports for people. There may be contact lists or membership info. So you would pick the reports that you want from here. So that's exactly the same list that was there before, but now it's just been put up into the admin functions. The website module is where you have both an admin side and a public side. So for example, committees, you need to be able to manage committees. And if I just click on committees, it will take me to committee administration. And so here we get to see all of the committees. I'll just go back. But the website modules also has a separate thing here that says switch to view mode. So if I switch to view mode, and now if I click on committees, I will see the page that your members would view. So we're not going into edit mode. We're going into view mode. So if I click on committees now it shows the user side. So this way we could say, okay, well, who's on the advertising committee and such. So that's the way we used to have it, so that you would have both the edit mode and view mode on the control panel. But it turns out that most of the time that you're in the control panel, you want to be in edit mode. So every time you jump to something in view mode, it comes back. We are now in edit mode because it says switch to view mode. So you can switch between looking at the management side of things versus looking at the user side of things. Now, for each one of these, there's also a little indication as to who is allowed access to these things. So if it has a P, it means the public is allowed access to it. If it's got an M, it means only members. If it's got P and M, it means public and members. And if it says NA, it's not active. So this means that the public can get to the gift memberships or the committees or the interests, but only members can get to volunteering. Now, you may want to change that. Maybe you want to let the public volunteer. But at the moment, only the members would be able to see the volunteering pages. Collectibles, on the other hand, is in an inactive state, which means that it's not available either to members or to the public. Perhaps it's still being configured. Perhaps they're still adding categories or things like that. And one of the things that we did to cut down on the screen real estate that was being used is to let you hide modules that you're simply not using. So if you were never going to be using the volunteering module, you could hide it so it doesn't appear on this list. And we'll come back to that in a moment. For example, there is a module called Check-in Desk, where you could check in your members, say, to events or to meetings or whatever, to just keep track of people that attended certain things. Well, that's not here. And I'll show you how we'll put it here and how we'll make the collectibles available. And we'll come back to this in a moment. The third panel here is setup. And these are things that you don't do very often, or very often it's only when you're setting up your organization, like defining member types or people options and things like that. So these are things that are rarely touched, or your renewal and expiration settings, things like that. You're going to set up, okay, do you have rolling renewals or everybody renews on the same date? These are not likely to change very often. So you set them up there. So I want to go back to this website modules section and talk about configuring the website modules, because in the previous control panel, there was an icon for changing configuration. There was a little wrench icon, and there was also icons for assigning coordinators. So this is now done on a tab by tab basis. It's not only for the website modules, for all of the modules here, you can configure. And this gives a list of all of the people functions. So if I want to look at, say, the people manager, there's only one thing you can do with people manager is you can assign coordinators. Now, coordinators are like administrators, but an administrator can administer the entire site. The administrator has complete control over everything in the control panel. A coordinator is being given administrator rights or control panel access to specific modules. So for the people manager, the only thing we can do is assign coordinators. So if I want to assign a coordinator, I can search, say, for Smith, and I can say I want Bob Smith to be a coordinator, and we add that, and now Bob Smith is a coordinator. And so if Bob Smith logs on, Bob Smith, since Bob is not a coordinator of anything else at the moment, will get a control panel and will only see one item. I'm going to remove Bob just by clicking on this. And then when I close, if there were any changes, they would get made here. An example of a change would be if I go to configure, and if I go, you'll see, let me just close here, the collectibles is in an inactive state. So if I go to collectibles, I can do things. You'll see here is more than just coordinators. Now we can actually configure the properties. We can change its status from inactive to active, or we could set it to disabled, which makes it hidden so it won't show up on the control panel at all. You can change the function name. So maybe it's not called collectibles, it's called collections or hoarding or anything else that you want, and you can change what it says on the menu. You also determine what the visibility is. Do you want only the members to see it, or members and any website visitor? You can also set up quick links. So if I call this collections, if I type in the word collections here, this could go to democlub.clubexpress.com/collections and would take them directly to the collectibles module. So these are kind of new things here. And again, if you're not sure what these things do, you can click on the help icon and it will take you to help for this. So this right now is inactive. If I change this and make this active and save it, the changes have been saved, but we don't close the configure dialog here because maybe there are other things you want to configure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the bottom here and says, for this tab, there is one module that has been disabled, the check-in desk. So if I click on the check-in desk, you see that it is disabled and hidden. I can make it active if it's ready to be used, or I can make it inactive if I still needed to work on it. So let's just make it active and save it. And so now, when I close this, two things will happen. One is collectible is now available to members, whereas before it was NA. And check-in desk is now active, and you can see it's available both to the public and the members. So this is how you control for each one of these tabs who can get to the modules, what modules are active. Because if you don't use volunteering at all in your organization, you can simply go into configure, go to volunteering, make it disabled, save, and choose save. And volunteering simply disappears from here. And if volunteering was on your menus, it actually disappears from the menus also. I'm not sure if it comes back if we re-enable volunteering. Let's see if it does, or if you have to put it back on the menus again. So now volunteering is back. And if I go to members only, no, looks like you would have to put it back on the menus, but it knows enough to take it off the menus because maybe you don't want to put it back on the same menu. So Samantha, before I move to some of the other tabs, do we have any questions so far?
None so far.
All right, so that's the people tab. So this is all about people and what people can do. As you may recall, the member manager and the non-member manager have been combined into the people manager, and we have both a tutorial and a webinar about the people manager. And so you could search for, say, anybody named Smith, and you could say, I want either members or non-members or both. And then we just search. And so now you'll find non-members and members and such. And this is really handy. There were some new things that were added where you can actually go by phone number and search for strings within a phone number. So if we look for 212, you could find people with 212 phone numbers. So that's kind of a new functionality. Again, there are tutorials and webinars about that. So things that are about the website are on the website tab. So this is where you manage custom pages, photos, reports. You've got the website modules where you have the photo albums and FAQs, and this is where your events happen, and this is where your documents. So this is like website content. And this is where you would also manage things like your web graphics and common content and website look and feel, things along those lines. These are things that typically administrators would do, but if you wanted to make somebody a moderator of the custom pages function, you would come over to custom pages and say, okay, who's a coordinator? And we'll come back to this in a few moments because not only can you assign coordinators for the entire custom pages module, you can also assign coordinators of particular pages. So they don't have rights to everything, but they would have rights to particular pages. So I'll show you how that works in a moment. And so all the rest of it works the same way. If you go into configure, you can give people rights to particular suites of reports. And again, change the names, call it documents. You could call it your library, and you can assign coordinators and do all of that. The money tab, not surprisingly, is about money. And certain things will only be enabled. For example, if you don't have QuickBooks enabled, it's not going to show up. And you have all the things about bank account activity, donations module, and your storefront are the only things with user interfaces. And then, of course, you've got your typical setup, your bank accounts and financial accounts and different money options. So this isn't any different than the previous user interface, but it's cleaner and it's neater and it's less confusing for people. And people seem to be pretty happy with it. The Club tab may say Club, but it also might say instead association, or that I think is under Club Options. When we click on Club Options, what do you call your club? Is it an academy, an agency, an association, a center, a theater? And so you can change that. And when you change that, it shows up every place. So if it shows up, say, on the control panel, if it was association, it would say association here, and down here, instead of saying club options, it would say association options, or upload association logo. So if your tab doesn't say club, that's because you don't call it a club. So here you've got things like data exports and reports. For those of you that are not familiar with that ad hoc reporting module, that is an optional module. That's a subscription where you can design your own reports, and the reports and dashboards, and they can have graphics and charts and all this kind of stuff. There's a tutorial about ad hoc reporting. And right now I've gone into the ad hoc reporting module itself because we have it enabled for this. And so you could design all sorts of reports. It's very, very impressive. And then, of course, on the communications tab, this is where you have things like text messaging, where you can enable text messaging. You've got the emailing side of things. And emailing is in the website module because there is an emailing page that you can enable. You can decide whether or not you want the users to see recent emails that were sent out on a web page. And if so, you can specify that particular emails show up or not show up on the web page. You've got discussion forums here. So this is just ways of connecting with your members. So those are the different tabs on the control panel. And it's pretty straightforward. Again, it's simplified. It's a little prettier than it was before, but all of the functionality that you had before is still there, and it's just sometimes done in a little different way. And again, we encourage you to check out the video tutorial, and that'll go through much of what I've just gone through here, and perhaps a couple of other things. All right, I'm going to jump into the administrators and module coordinators. Samantha, do we have any other questions at this point?
None so far.
So the question is, what happens when somebody, say, goes to your Contact Us page? And there will be lists of president and board members and things like that. I'm not going to get into how to set up the Contact Us page because there is a video called Managing Contacts and Administrators that goes into this in detail. And you can go to YouTube and search for the word contacts. That's a pretty good way of doing it, because that goes into how you set up this page and how you assign titles to people and how they get contacted. But the problem is that very often people's terms expire. Well, if the terms are like in an executive committee and you just go and update the person who is the president, you're changing the president's role to somebody else, then all this stuff happens automatically. But what doesn't happen automatically is, like, say you've got somebody who's a moderator and their contract is up and they simply say, okay, I'm no longer the communications director for this organization because I was hired from a PR firm and I'm just no longer in that role. So we get messages from people when we send out messages to administrators from people say, I'm no longer an admin of this club. And so normally what happens is we tell people you should contact the other admins of the club to remove you as an administrator so you don't get these emails. Especially, you shouldn't be getting, not only should you should not be getting these emails, you should not have administrative access to that organization. So there's a couple of things I want to do here, and I want to show you how you do this because there are times where you should revisit these things. The first thing we'll do is we will start on the club tab. So on the club tab, at the bottom of the club tab, there is a link for administrators and coordinators. Now, none of this has changed, although there is one small change from the video tutorial that we did a year or so ago. So at the top of the administrators and coordinators manager, you can add and remove administrators. So say Bill Parr is no longer going to be an administrator, we can simply remove Bill Parr. And now that administrator is removed. They haven't been removed from the organization. They just no longer have administrator permissions. We can add an administrator, which is very simple. You just search for the member and add them, and they become an administrator. There's a rather cool little icon here for favorites that will show what are the favorites that Martin has set up. So Martin says, oh, I got favorites for people manager, committees administration, and pending payments. Well, what's all this about? Well, anyone who is an administrator or a coordinator gets a favorites link next to their name. So if they hover over favorites, I can go directly to the people manager, directly to committees administration, or directly to pending payments without having to go to the control panel and go to the right tab and do all of that. So this is just a favorites for administrative functions. I do not believe we have favorites to particular reports at this point, but any administrator or module coordinator can add things to their favorites by clicking on edit favorites, and we get this same list. Well, when you're in this administrator and coordinators, I could go to Callie and say, oh, okay, I want her to be able to manage the check-in desk. Well, it's not even manage the check-in desk. I want to put this on her favorites. Turns out if she doesn't have permission to that, when she clicks on the favorites, it'll tell you don't have permission to get to it. So this is just a shortcut way of putting links onto the favorites drop down. So that's really handy. Now, you can get rid of all but one administrator. You cannot remove the last administrator because it'd be pulling the rug out from under you. If you want to remove Martin Smith as an administrator, you'd have to assign somebody else an administrator. And since I'm logged in as Martin Smith, as soon as you delete Martin Smith, you won't have access to this page any longer. So those are administrators. Coordinators, as I mentioned, are people that have administrative permissions over particular functions, not over the entire environment. So if we look at, say, Jenny Cho, I can click over here that says, what functions is Jenny allowed to administer? So if I click on this, it brings up a list sorted by tab of the things she's allowed to do. So we said she's allowed to do people manager and people lookup. She's also allowed to do interests. This non-member database is a report. It's not something separate to the member manager versus people manager. It is a non-member database report. So if you wanted her to be able to get to a membership info report, she could do that too, and maybe member contact lists. And then if I wanted to also say that she is a manager for custom pages, we could also say she's manager for custom pages. And when you come down to the bottom, you choose save, and that updates the rights for her. So you can look at anybody, and when you add a coordinator, it shows you that same screen, except first you have to select a member. So you select the member, then choose the things that you want that member to be able to administer. Now, there are a couple of really cool things that you can do. So Jenny is a manager for the people function and interests and a couple of other things. But if I want somebody else to either assume her role or to have the same rights as her, I can come over here and I can say, I want Audrey to have those same rights. So if I look at Audrey Abonte now, her rights will be pre-populated with all of the same rights that Jenny has. So this is much simpler than having to figure out what rights did Jenny have access to and then try to replicate it. I don't recall if it copies over the favorites. It does. It copies over her favorites also. So there are people manager and interests are the two things. As I say, you can't favorite reports at this point, but you'll see in a moment I'll log in as Jenny to show you how this works. In fact, let me do that now. If I come over here, okay, we're still logged in as Jenny. In fact, I'm going to log out as Jenny and then log back in as her because we just changed her permissions. So when Jenny goes to the control panel, and the reason I wanted to log out is because this only checks permissions once when you log in. When we go to Jenny, she gets an abbreviated control panel. On the People tab, she can see the People Manager, the People Lookup, and these two groups of reports. She can also manage the Interest module. So she's doing exactly what an administrator would do, but she's doing it only for these particular modules. And I showed you on website, she also has access to all the custom pages. So when we search here, it's going to show, all of these pages. Now, as long as I'm here, I want to show you that you can also assign. Actually, she can't do it. Let me go back to Martin Smith. But this is showing how Jenny, being a coordinator of a few functions, can get to the control panel. She gets a favorites link, and she can do administrative tasks on all of these. Now, if I come back to our administrator, Martin, and I go to the control panel, and I do the same thing. If I go to the website tab, and I go to custom pages, and I search for the custom pages, we get an extra icon. This is something that the coordinators cannot do. And that is for any particular page, we now have an icon for coordinators for this page. So I can come over here and add a coordinator. Maybe you have somebody, maybe it's a page about a particular event or a page about a particular program that you offer. And you want the people that are in charge of that program to be able to update that page. You could add a coordinator. And so if we go to, say, Diaz, you can make Manny a coordinator. And then when Manny logs in, he'll see a control panel where he's got a website tab. And when he goes to the custom pages, he will only see, if he searches, he will only see those things that he has the rights to manage. So it's a very powerful little feature for helping to distribute the workload across your organization. To say, okay, I want you to be able to manage this page and that page and these three other pages, but I don't want you to be able to mess with our other pages. So that's very, very handy. Going back to the control panel, if we go to the Communications tab, there's a couple of things to consider. One is at the bottom under Setup, there's email accounts. When you click on email accounts, if you have any email account forwarding, this is where you would set it. So if you had something for training at your club.com or whatever, and it was forwarding to a particular person, well, that person is not in the role anymore, and you needed to forward to somebody else, by all means, come in here and change it so that the person that's no longer in that role stops getting the emails. So that's important. And the other thing is, going back to the control panel, in discussion forums, if we go into discussion forums here, discussion forums can have moderators. So, for example, the safety forum has members, and in the members, if I decide to show special members, which is what the default's to, it shows at the moment there is only one moderator. That's Jenny Cho. You could make somebody else. I could make Manny Diaz a moderator by coming over here and just clicking here to make him a moderator. We just published an updated video about forum moderation, how you can manage messages that are waiting for approval or messages that have been flagged as inappropriate. But if I go to the safety forum here, you can actually administer the forum, and you can go to members and you can add new moderators. But how do you find out who are your current moderators? Because now you have people that have changed roles in the organization. So it turns out that if you go into forums and you go into reports, you can have reports about a particular forum where you can find out who the special forum members are. And special is people that are opted out or are moderators or are moderated or banned. But you can just go to the reports here and say, oh, okay, let me see who my moderators are per each forum. So for each one of the forums, it's going to show you. So showing that Burning Questions, Jenny is a moderator. Basket Case, Jenny and Ben are moderators, etc. So that's one approach. And the other is to say, oh, by member, let's look at the moderators by member. So Jenny's about to leave. Where is she a moderator? So if I scroll down to Jenny Cho, so we see she is an active moderator in the equipment forum, the safety forum, the Burning Questions, and Basket Case. So if somebody needs to take over her responsibility, in addition to her coordinator responsibility, do we need to find somebody else to take over her forum moderator status? And so these are the kinds of things that are worth reviewing, particularly at the beginning of the year when roles may have changed. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Samantha, do we have anything?
There were a lot of interested questions on setting up coordinators. I think that maybe a couple of people weren't necessarily aware that you could have coordinators at the individual forum level or at the individual custom page level. So that was a fun thing for everyone to learn.
Well, at the forum level, you don't have coordinators, you have moderators at the forum level. Forums is the only one, because you have coordinators for the forums module. You can have moderators at the individual forum level. There is one other thing. If we go to website here, I believe on photo albums, you can have photo albums and you can have member photo albums. So you can have photo albums for your club, or you could have photo albums and you can have photo albums for your members. Well, you can also assign, much like you can assign coordinators to a particular custom page, you can assign a coordinator to particular club albums. So you could say, oh, okay, I want to have the annual picnic. So we want Mary to be able to upload pictures into the album and things like that, and remove pictures from last year's. And so you can do the same thing. It's much the same as the assigning coordinators just to a particular web page. Here you can assign coordinators just to a particular photo album.
Okay.
Any other questions?
It looks like that's about it. It's just a lot of the questions about some of the stuff that you had mentioned.
We're very happy that you come and visit us on these webinars. Again, check out the recording that's called Managing Contacts and Administrators. It goes into a little more detail. And we hope you all stay well, and we hope to see you in the next webinar. Thanks for coming.